All right, so some news here as we have a quarterback change. Anthony Richardson out as the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Joe Flacco has taken over as starter, and it's an interesting move. I was actually weirdly I had just finished gathering the tape I need for my Anthony Richardson video that I'll make later this week. So I'm glad I haven't recorded that just yet, so I don't have to go back and re-record it. But I was watching the game, and it's undeniable. There's just so much off with Anthony Richardson's game, and I was looking at just like some PFF grades just to try and get a second opinion on it, because a lot what people say with Anthony Richardson is, well, look at Josh Allen when he first started, right? Josh Allen very much struggled at the beginning of his career, but ultimately found a way to really turn things around and ended up has at this point been a top tier quarterback in the league. I think most people would say that's fair to say. So looking at the PFF grades, Anthony Richardson's are significantly lower than Josh Allen's were even his first couple of years. They're actually around where Zach Wilson's were his first couple of years. So it's tough. It's tough. And again, the tape I've watched matches that. You look at the numbers, he had 32 attempts, just 10 completions against the Texans. So less than a third of his completions of his pass attempts were caught. He's still under 50% on the season. So we have a pretty decent sample size now. I brought up heading into the Houston game that his passer rating was against the blitz was 5, passer rating of 5 against the blitz, which is again significantly lower than if you just spike the ball every time you see a blitz. So that's an issue, and it hasn't been great just yet. And this is the dilemma where Joe Flacco is probably not going to win you a Super Bowl, right? He's a good quarterback. We saw this with the Browns last year. Can maybe get you to the playoffs, but what's the ceiling with Joe Flacco? And he's an older quarterback, so you're not going to be able to build around him, right? Because maybe if you gave him if you could put that kind of production together for 4 or 5 years, maybe you could then build a contending roster around him. But it is kind of a situation where there isn't really a future there with Flacco. But is there more of a future keeping Flacco as a starter than there is going with Anthony Richardson? I think one thing that I was going to bring up in the video, but I'll bring it up here, is that I did see some tough body language on some of these Colts players on some of the throws that Richardson was missing. Again, Richardson's biggest issue has always been accuracy, in my opinion. He will just miss throws by a mile. And I think to some degree, you have to keep the locker room, right? You can't just go out and let guys, let a quarterback who clearly isn't playing well continue to be the starter. At a certain point, players are going to get frustrated. So I think that is an aspect, is you have to keep the locker room. The other thing is the Colts, despite the fact that I don't know if they've been overly impressive this first half of the season through 8 games, they're 4-4, and they're very much in the playoff hunt right now. They've got a couple of tough games coming up as they play the Vikings, the Bills, then they get the Jets, but then they have to go play the Lions before the schedule really easing up. The last 5 games of the season, they play the Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, and Jaguars. So a lot easier the last 5 games of the season. But these next 3 out of 4, I mean, they really have to go 1-3 there necessarily. Really to that would put them at 4? That would be 5-7. Doing the quick math there, and then you hope you can maybe win out the rest of the way, or at least win 4 out of the next 5 the rest of the way, which would put them in a playoff spot, probably. I mean, the AFC has been very weird this year. Because, again, keep in mind, they're a 4-4 record right now. They are a half game out of a playoff spot. Currently, the Ravens and the Broncos are both 5-3. The Chargers are 4-3. So, due to the bye week, they have a half game lead over the Colts, who are alone in the 8th seed right now. So, they are very much in the playoff hunt. And I think that's what they're trying to do, is say, hey, we nearly made the playoffs last year with Minshew. Why give that up? Why just accept the fact that, we're, going to stink this year? No, we can be competitive. Again, we saw last year, Flacco played very well until he got to the playoffs. He didn't play great in that playoff game, but still, he got there, and he has a history of playing well in playoff games previously in his career. Look at Baltimore. People remember the Super Bowl run, but he was usually just good in general in the playoffs. That's how he got the nickname January Joe, because he usually showed up in the big spots. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting decision, right? Because again, to kind of recap, you are essentially, I don't want to say completely giving up on Anthony Richardson, because who knows, maybe you keep him as a backup, maybe he finds his way back into the lineup. We saw Malik Willis with the Green Bay, kind of bounce around, finally find a way to get into the get back into starting position. Of course, not with the team that drafted him, but still, it's not necessarily over for Anthony Richardson. But at the same time, I think it's fair to say, like, at this point, what are we doing? Keeping him out there game after game? It's not working. So why not go out and, you paid decent money on a backup quarterback in Joe Flacco. Flacco has outperformed Richardson up until this point. Why not keep him out there? Now, the other question is, okay, that's the decision aspect of things. Now let's talk about where the Colts are at, because I do think there is some real things to like about this Colts team. Again, their receivers are very good. I think that Josh Downs is obviously really having a great year, and him and Flacco seem to have a really good connection. You have, of course, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and then Jonathan Taylor, who had a big day against Houston. They nearly beat Houston. Like, that's worth mentioning. They came within 3 of beating the Houston Texans, who many people feel like are a dark horse contender, although another news that just broke was they lost Diggs for the season, so that sucks for them. But, can the Colts find a way to be a playoff contending team? I mean, you look at Joe Flacco and what he's done. It is fair to say he hasn't necessarily been, elite Joe Flacco. There's the meme there, right? But, he's been very good. The team itself has still kind of, I guess that's what I should say. It's not that he hasn't been great. He's been good. But it's more so the team hasn't exactly gone on this great run with Flacco. They did beat the Steelers, and that's kind of the one thing you look at. They did also lose to Jacksonville. That was a game that Flacco played very well in, but the defense gave up 37. This Colts defense has at times gotten gashed down the field, so it's something they're going to have to work on. So I think my gut, as of right now, says that I still think the Colts are on the outside looking in for the playoffs, just because you do have, like I said, I think they're going to be pretty heavy. They're going to be underdogs against the Vikings, Bills, and Lions. And if they lose those 3 games, they almost have to just win out, or maybe 9-8 would be enough. Like I said, the AFC is a bit weaker, but I don't know. So I feel like some team is going to turn it around in the AFC. Maybe it won't happen, and maybe the Colts will be able to sneak in with a 9-8 record. But I think 10 wins what you would feel comfortable with. It's totally possible, though, and I was not looking at it as a real possibility prior to this. Again, I think they would, we'll see how they might need a couple Broncos and Chargers losses. They do play the Broncos later on this season, so it might come down to that game as to who gets into the playoffs and who doesn't. But I don't know. Interesting decision here by the Colts, but that's what I think. And one thing, I guess the last thing I'll mention as well is, like, part of it too is at a certain point you got to keep your job, right? If you're a head coach, like, you got to play the guy who gives you a better chance to win, because if things go horrible with Richardson, then, like, you're not, who cares if it's slightly better for an organization if the organization fires you because you lose games. So, yeah, that's what I think about all this. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.